Volodymyr Zelensky is set to meet European leaders and President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff this weekend in Berlin. That's according to the White House, which is pressing for an end to the war with Russia after revealing a peace plan last month, triggering a flurry of diplomacy. On the ground, Ukraine announced advances in the Kharkiv region, where Zelensky went to congratulate his troops. Our Ukraine correspondent, Gulliver Cragg, is standing by in Kyiv. Thanks for joining us, Gulliver. So these reports that Steve Witkoff will be there meeting Zelensky in Berlin this weekend, what can we expect from that?
Well, I think it's not being read as a sign that a deal is really imminent. Perhaps if it was, then Donald Trump himself would want to come. And I think that the Europeans and the Ukrainians would have preferred Donald Trump to come because I think they feel they have more chances of persuading the US president of anything than Steve Witkoff, who has an extremely bad reputation in Ukraine, the worst really of all of the various people who have been involved on the American side in these talks trying to find a settlement to the war in Ukraine. Steve Witkoff is the guy who goes to Moscow, comes back repeating Russian talking points. He's seen as both incompetent and suspected of being on the side of the Russians absolutely here. But it confirms the Ukrainians, I think, despite what's being said publicly, in their conviction that a deal is not ready, that there is not something that the Russians will agree to, first and foremost, and also that although they talk about having made progress on security guarantees, there hasn't yet been anything concrete coming out about security guarantees that would be solid enough for Ukraine, coming from its Western allies and the United States, for Ukraine to then accept territorial concessions or whatever else that they're required to do in order to get those security guarantees.
And talking about Zelensky's visit to Kupiansk yesterday, what were the things to note about that visit?
Well, first of all, I think that it is extraordinary that he went to Kupiansk, and perhaps people who aren't familiar with the geography of Ukraine don't quite understand how powerful that image is. He's by the sign that is the entrance to the town. According to the maps and what we know about the situation there, that means he was probably only about 1.5 kilometers possibly from the nearest Russian positions. It's an act of extraordinary courage, which even people who have been very critical of Zelensky in Ukraine in recent weeks said, whoa, that really does show something. And I think that people in Ukraine felt quite proud because the Russians just days earlier had been saying that they had taken Kupiansk and they were inviting foreign journalists. Vladimir Putin has said foreign journalists should come and visit these towns so that we can prove that we've taken control of them, knowing that the foreign journalists would not because of the security situation. And you had the Ukrainian media saying, look at that, Volodymyr Zelensky, when Vladimir Putin was saying foreign journalists should come to these towns, shows up instead to prove the opposite, to prove that Kupiansk has not fallen. I think it's very, very important as a morale boost to Ukrainians and as a way for Zelensky to climb back the popularity ratings, to claw back some of that popularity that he had lost in the wake of the recent corruption scandals. All that being said, Kupiansk is in Kharkiv region, it's not in the Donbass. The most important battle in this war is going on in the Donbass, and there it's the Russians who are advancing, albeit slowly, not the Ukrainians.